Junior gardeners in the Rockford area celebrate the fruits or vegetables of their labor with a taste test.
These budding green thumbs also tried out some new recipes. 23 News reporter Miriam Niesmeyer captures the fun.
Green tomato and tomato.
These herbs, veggies, and fruits are grown by more than 24 children at the Grove at Keith Creek. 4 years ago, Grace United Methodist Church started a garden program that teaches kids about fresh fruits and vegetables and builds skills they might not otherwise get.
All this was planted by the kids. It's good. They planted, started from scratch, and the plant, just see their excitement each day when they come down here and go through the garden.
Organizers say by maintaining the garden, kids learn teamwork and kindness. They also cook using the fruits and veggies and study the science behind the growing process. Recently, the kids showed off their hard work and let their friends and family taste their harvest.
Making sure that kids know about really healthy food and being able to produce it and have access to it, I think that's a really important thing for our community, to have those places around the community to do that.
Lead coordinator Dawnette Naylor says before the program started, most of the kids had never tried some of the fruits and vegetables.
One of my friends here said, "Gosh, I didn't think I liked vegetables, but now I think I do." So that was a success.
The junior gardeners told us they now love tomatoes, but spinach, not so much.
They're learning a little bit more about vegetables, which most of us kids, when we were kids, didn't care much for.
Working for you in Rockford, Miriam Niesmeyer, 23 News.
Thank you, Miriam. And leaders hope to continue programs with the children at the Grove and provide transportation to and from church events and services.
Love to hear it.